Hi, welcome to Employee Sensitization Training under POSH Act 2013 by POSH Help Building Inclusive Workplaces. Why e-learning at POSH systems? Because it gives you in-depth coverage of the Act. It's as good as in-person training. Lots of examples. Scenario-based learning, knowledge check on completion, tracking progress, and certificate generated on successful completion. The agenda of the training: A. Understand what's sexual harassment at workplace. Know the history behind POSH Act. Know how to prevent and prohibit sexual harassment at workplace under POSH Act. Know what are the repercussions of sexual harassment at workplace. Let's have an introduction background. This act came into existence on the basis of the Bhavri Devi case, which led to Vishakha guidelines in August 1997. And after Nirbhaya case, which happened in 2012, and the sexual harassment of women at workplace, which is into Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act 2010, after a lot of uproar of #MeToo, this act came into existence. POSH Act 2013 is primarily prevention, creating awareness, putting policy in place, employee training, and prohibition, which is prohibit by authority, saying this is the misconduct and if found guilty can be terminated. Redressal, if still something happens, need to redress through IC. Let's understand what is POSH Act. It is a special law. It is only pertaining to sexual harassment. It is a welfare law. It is a civil law. It deals only with sexual harassment at workplace. Settlement is the option with complainant only. FIR can be lodged separately. POSH is strict and most uniform law. This is the one of the very few law applicable entire nation, including Jammu and Kashmir. You need lesser proof under this law than the criminal law to get justice. In this law, you need to prove only the probability, whereas under criminal law, proof need to be beyond reasonable doubt. Who is the law applicable to? It applies to all over India. It applies to all the establishments, irrespective of industry. Where is the place of operation? Whether it's a public, private, semi-private, individual or partnership firm. Any government, semi-government, public sector undertakings, corporations and institutes. Any private sector organization, any foreign establishment with office in India. Hospitals, nursing homes, any sport institute, stadium, or any other place visited by employee during work assignment or during employment. The survey says 62% of victims never reported the incident. 7% of the harassed were men. Colleagues at work seem to cause more harassment than managers. It occurs in matrix of power more. Let's take a scenario 1. A female trainee is demanded to stay back late night by a senior colleague to discuss a project, even when she is not a part of it and none of the team members are staying back. She finds it approach sexually implicit and reports it. Would you consider this as an act of sexual harassment? Yes, this will be considered as a sexual harassment at workplace. Let's take another case. A group of employees stand outside after the shift is over and sing songs with sexual connotations, as and when their female colleagues pass by. Will you report this as a case of a sexual harassment at workplace? Yes, a very clear instance of sexual harassment at workplace. Let's take a scenario 3. A colleague often displays pornographic material on his mobile phone and invites you to watch it. Would you register this case as sexual harassment? Yes, you should. Report this incident. It falls under the purview of POSH Act. Let's look at the scenario 4. A housemaid is forced to stay at her employer's place and not allowed to meet her parents or relative. Would this come under the POSH Act 2013? No, this is not admissible because there is no sexual connotation to this case. But it is only a case of workplace harassment. Let's understand what is considered as extended workplace. Workplace is not confined only to office setup, though it is an extended workplace which includes office transports, client sites, office parties, official meeting outside office premises. Let us take few examples of workplace. Office buildings, shop floors, customer's home, office, project site, or any other place visited by employee during their employment. For that matter, even office transportation provided by the employer for commuting to work, work-related journeys are considered as workplace. Training programs, conferences, unpaid breaks, organization-sponsored events, picnics, parties, or for that private parties where your colleagues are invited to, considered as workplace. Product service launches are also considered as extended workplace. Remote working as hybrid working, social media spaces would also fall under the purview of this law. Let us understand what is anti-sexual harassment policy for work from home or remote working. Sharing of inappropriate photos, videos, tagging co-workers in any inappropriate content is a strict no-no. No suggestive emoticons are shared that may give an unwelcoming sexual undertones to a reader. Be mindful of body language during office video calls on various platforms such as Zoom, Teams, etc. Ensure no inappropriate emails are shared and phone calls or WhatsApp chats. Be mindful of conversation on official calls. No personal questions, talks having sexual connotations, or private comments between colleagues must be shared. Ensure if a screen is shared to discuss work, there are no offensive screensavers or content that amounts to sexual harassment. Ensure that video calls on different platforms such as Zoom, Google, Meet, etc. are done in formal settings. POSH complaints are still being filed. However, the incidents are more diverse now. For example, a POSH complaint was filed due to an incident wherein the employee was sitting in a room with a sexual offensive poster visible during call. Let's have a look at another scenario, number 5. It was Diwali celebration at Pooja's manager's house. Pooja visited there with her husband. While leaving, she touched manager's feet to seek his blessings. He caressed her back for longer than normal time, and it made her feel very uncomfortable. Can this house be considered as a workplace? Can this incident be reported to her IC? Yes, any kind of unwelcome touch, gesture, or indication can be reported under this POSH Act. Sexual harassment is illegal. It affects everyone, undermines organizations' trust and reputation. It harms morale and damages productivity. Sexual harassment at workplace. Any unwelcome sexual advances, request for sexual favors, or other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature that explicitly or implicitly affects an individual's employment, unreasonably interferes with an individual's work performance, creates intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. There are 4 types of sexual harassment: verbal, written, physical, non-verbal, visual. Let's check what falls under verbal or written sexual harassment. Remarks of a sexual nature about a person's clothing, personal behavior, or body. Sexually explicit statements questions, jokes, or anecdotes, requesting sexual favors or dates, spreading rumors about a person's personal or sexual life, coercion of sexual activity by threat of punishment. What falls under physical sexual harassment? Impeding or blocking a person's physical movement, inappropriate and unwanted touching of a person and or their clothing, other inappropriate touching including kissing, hugging, petting, stroking or rubbing, playing music with offensive or degrading language, purposefully brushing up against another person. Let's check what's non-verbal. Looking at person's body up and down, making derogatory gestures or facial expressions of a sexual nature, frequently following or standing too close to a person on purpose, whistling or staring in a sexually suggestive or an offensive manner. Visual sexual harassment, displaying suggestive sexually objects, pictures, cartoons, posters, calendars, or computer screens, showing other people's sexually suggestive text, messages, or emails, sharing sexually inappropriate images or videos such as pornography with co-workers. Let us look at the verbal written sexual harassment in details. Any unwelcome compliments of sexual nature, offensive jokes of sexual nature, calling girls names like doll, babe, or honey, whistling at someone, catcalls, making suggestive sexual comments about a person's body, clothing, or looks, asking about sexual fantasies, spreading lies of sexual nature, telling sexual jokes, stories, or teasing or asking sexual questions, repeatedly asking out a person who is not interested, making kissing sounds, howling, and smacking lips, telling lies or spreading rumors about a person's sex life, written commands, notes, or letters of a sexual nature. What is considered as a non-verbal harassment? Looking a person up and down, staring at someone, blocking a person's path, following the person, giving personal gifts, displaying sexually suggestive visuals, making facial expressions such as winking, throwing kisses, or licking lips, making sexual gestures with hands or through body movements. These are all considered as a non-verbal harassment. What is considered as a physical harassment? Inappropriate or unwanted touching, such as groping, pinching, grabbing of the body parts, tearing or pulling at a person's clothing, including snapping bras, pulling down pants, or flipping skirts, standing in someone's way or standing too close in a way that makes the person feel uncomfortable, bumping into someone or brushing against the person on purpose in a way that makes the person uncomfortable, unwanted patting, hugging, or kissing are all examples of physical harassment. Sexual harassment can be broadly classified into two categories. Quid pro, which means this for that. When an employee's professional assessment is done based on the sexual favor rendered by her, like salary increase, promotions, work assignment allocated. Hostile work environment, when behavior or conduct of sexual nature interferes with the work and it creates an intimidating work environment. This implies hostile sexual work environment. Let's understand the quid pro quo sexual harassment. It's a Latin word. It's doing a favor or providing advantage to someone in return to something. It occurs when anyone in authority offers to provide some favor like a salary increase in return for satisfaction of a sexual demand. Occurs if the manager promises not to fire or punish an employee for a wrongdoing. In case of a job applicant being told that the decision to hire her depends on the acceptance of or rejection of sexual advances. Let us understand the hostile work environment sexual harassment. If employee is subject to physical, verbal, or non-verbal conduct, uninvited and unwelcome, It can be created by a coworker or boss. Environment that does not provide an employee with the favorable conditions to carry out his or her duties. It is generally related to the gender of the person being harassed and interferes with the ability of the person to do his or her job. Why is it important to prevent sexual harassment? Because sexual harassment harms us all. Gender inclusion is not possible in hostile environment. To ensure all employees are treated with respect and dignity, and it also affects the workplace productivity and adversely affects organizations' reputation. Most importantly, it is now mandatory as per law to comply with POSH Act. Who can file complaint? You can be anybody, an employee, a support staff, a daily wage earner, an intern, a volunteer, a job seeker, a client, a visitor, a customer, or a guest. Even an ex-employee can also file complaint if the perpetrator is still working in the organization. Can you file an anonymous complaint? Yes, you can. However, this will be taken care under the service rules of the organization. Against whom can a complaint be lodged? A sexual harassment complaint can be lodged against a male, a female, or a third gender. Let's have a look at the scenario 6. A girl was called in for an interview in a very reputed automobile company. However, the senior official asked her to stay in the hotel where he said he would groom her for the interview. Later, the girl reported sexual misconduct by senior official. Can the girl report the sexual harassment case with ICU of the automobile company? Yes, she can lodge a complaint with internal committee as she was a visitor to the company and is covered under the POSH Act 2013. She is eligible to seek redressal under the POSH Act. Let's look at the case scenario 7. Aditi and Bindya are both employees of P company with 25 employees. Aditi from time to time circulates sexual messages to Bindya on WhatsApp and makes sexual jokes about Bindya in Bindya's presence. Bindya files a complaint under Sexual Harassment Act at workplace. Is it admissible under POSH Act 2013? Yes, under POSH Act 2013, any unwelcome misconduct against a woman by man, woman, and a third gender is permissible. Let us try understand if sex stereotyping is equal to sexual harassment. Harassing a person because that person doesn't conform to gender stereotype, looks, speech, personality, or lifestyle is a sexual harassment. Harassment because someone is performing a job which is usually or was previously performed by another person of different sex also comes under sexual harassment. POSH Act gives the protection against retaliation. What does it mean? Retaliation is a serious violation of the Prevention of Sexual Harassment policy. Any person found to have retaliated against an individual for reporting harassment will be subject to appropriate disciplinary procedures. Anyone who experiences retaliation in the nature of intimidation, pressure to withdraw the case, or threats for reporting should report to the internal committee immediately. As with complaints of harassment, this too will be treated as a major misconduct and the committee will take appropriate action to prevent or rectify the retaliation. Let us look another case. A female employee is suddenly terminated from service after she reported sexual advances by a manager during a company tour. Will you report this as an instance of sexual harassment? Yes, this is classic example of use of position and sexual harassment at workplace and should be reported to the internal committee. Let us understand the process of filing a complaint. Report the incident. Complain to the internal committee. Notify respondent. Get a response. Does respondent agree? If not, conduct an inquiry. Do the findings and recommendation report. Settlement or punishment. An action to be recommended. We've been talking about an internal committee. But what is an internal committee? An IC or internal committee is a committee set up to prevent, protect, and provide redressal to the aggrieved person. The structure of an IC is it is always chaired by a presiding officer who is a senior level female employee. The quorum consists of any other two employees who are committed to the cause of a woman's safety. And the committee should have an external member with 5 years of work experience in women empowerment, could be from an NGO or from a legal practitioner who is not practicing at the moment. As previously advised, the IC must be headed by a presiding officer who is a senior female employee, 2 other employees to be appointed as IC member, an external member must be appointed. The external members should be committed to the cause of women's safety. 50% of the IC members should be women. The members can hold the position for a period of up to 3 years. An IC to be constituted in every administrative division of the organization, wherever there are offices located. What are the possible actions that can be recommended against the respondent? A written apology or a written warning can be given to the respondent. There could be deduction of salary, and this can be paid to the aggrieved person. An IC can recommend carrying out of the community service by the respondent, or they can recommend undergoing the counseling session as well. In case if the incident reported is grave in nature, the services of the respondent can be terminated as well. Besides this, there could be withhold of pay rise or any kind of an increments. The promotion can be withheld, or there could be reprimand or a censure against the respondent. Now, like every other act, this can be misused as well. So what are the possible action that can be taken against a malicious or a frivolous complaint? As in the case of action or recommendation against harasser, so that the IC can also take corrective step towards any kind of false complaint being raised. Malicious reporting of sexual harassment is also a form of a harassment. For a complaint lodged of sexual harassment with the IC, there could be a settlement or inquiry. On request of an aggrieved person, IC can make efforts to settle the matter through conciliation, or else an inquiry is opened and follow its life cycle and closed once decision is made and implemented. Let's look at the scenario number 9. Arvind and Sugna are part of a team at an organization. Sugna reports to Arvind. Arvind constantly tells Sugna that they should go out somewhere after work hours, perhaps for a late night movie or a dinner. Sugna is uncomfortable but smiles and says she's busy most often. One day, Arvind tells Sugna that if she turns down his request again, her ratings will go down in her mostly monthly review. So what do you think is the case of sexual harassment? This is a classic case of quid pro sexual harassment and should be reported to internal committee. Let's look at another case. Neha is part of a team that reports to Neeraj, who is her college senior. Neha is very good at work and is assigned the most prestigious project in the company, instead of Neeraj, who is the senior in the team and has a lot more work experience than Neha. Nirav is very upset and believes that Neha has been assigned the coveted project because they must be having a relationship. He jokes about this with other team members, and slowly this spreads around in the company. Is this sexual harassment or not? Yes, this is a sexual harassment. It creates hostile work environment and spreading false rumors about sexual life of anyone is considerable under POSH Act 2013 and should be reported. What should we do in case if we are the receiving end of sexual harassment? Say no. Unless someone says no or raises a voice against it, it is not considered as a sexual harassment. You, as a person, need to create boundaries and advise the harasser that his actions are not welcomed and it is causing distress and distraught to you. Once a person says no, it means no. Don't violate the space of the other person. Let's understand POSH Act 2013 better by another case scenario. Reshma just joined as a fresher and has been undergoing training. One of the trainers was Rashid, who was handling the new product development. Reshma wanted to be a part of his team and approached him. On seeing her enthusiasm and performance, Rashid ensured that she would be joining Rashid's team post the training. Reshma joined Rashid's team. Rashid asked Reshma out for dinner a few times and she agreed willingly. Slowly the workload increased, and once when Rashid asked Reshma out to dinner, she refused. Rashid continued to keep calling her and send multitude of emails. Do you think this will fall under the POSH Act 2013? Yes. When someone says no and you still pester them repeatedly, it will be considered as a sexual harassment and needs to be reported to internal committee. Let's take another scenario. Abhi was entering the elevator and Ashutosh came up from behind, tapped on her shoulders and told her she looked hot in the red dress. Abhi felt uncomfortable and stared at Ashutosh and told him to keep his hands off and use discretion in his language. Ashutosh apologized and it never happened again. Will this fall under sexual harassment? Well, even though Abhi felt uncomfortable and was asked not to do so to Ashutosh, Ashutosh realized his mistake and apologized. Hence, just a verbal or written warning can be given. Now, we've been talking about what is considered as a workplace sexual harassment. But let us also understand what is not workplace sexual harassment. Following up on work absence by an employer or by the management, requiring performance to job standards. If the seniors or a boss reprimands an employee in relation to work or meeting targets or the deadlines. Any work-related stress, example meeting deadlines or quality standards. Any kind of touching, brushing against pushing without a sexual connotation cannot be considered as a sexual harassment at workplace. Giving any kind of constructive feedback about work, positive or negative, does not follow under sexual harassment. The very essence of the POSH Act 2013 is to prevent and prohibit sexual harassment. But how do you do that? Firstly, do not ignore it. Don't pretend it didn't happen. Inform the harasser that the behavior is unwelcome. Report the incident. Tell the internal committee exactly what happened as soon as possible. Do not accept the behavior. Do not tolerate the harassment even if it seems that others around you are tolerating it. Be supportive. If someone wishes to talk to you about their personal experience, listen with empathy and then direct them to the internal committee. Let us look at what is called as a consensual relationships or out of office hour relationships. Consensual relationships are not harassment if they are welcomed by the persons involved. However, if such behavior is unwelcome and is creating a hostile work environment, then it will be considered as a sexual harassment. If a consensual or a mutual relationship ceases to exist, conduct once considered welcome may later be seen as an unwelcome gesture. Either person may end the relationship at any point in time without fear of retaliation at the job. Behavior that was welcome within a consensual relationship becomes unwelcome and it will be treated as sexual harassment. Please understand, what you said may not be what they heard. The law understand what is the impact and it gives importance to the impact it causes on the person rather than what was your intention. Always remember, impact matters and not the intent under the sexual harassment. What matters is how the complainant perceives it and not what the harasser intended. If you're not intended to do something, but somebody is getting impacted, just back off. Don't intrude. Well, this is a pictorial depiction of what the POSH Act sexual harassment would look into. Mrs. N, Mr. Q. So if Mr. Q is sending some WhatsApp messages which are not parliamentary and Miss N says no, however, the harasser still keeps doing that, well, this can be reported to an IC and it will be treated as sexual harassment. Understand, POSH complaint can be raised when you are commenting on somebody's body, on their clothes, on their personality, on their sexual choices, or their sexual preferences. So when somebody is telling you, you need to wear that skirt every group meeting, or they love the perfume that you're wearing, if that's making you uncomfortable, raise your voice. Make it clear to the perpetrator that you do not like such kind of comments and they need to be parliamentary and civilized about their language, as this could be reported as a hostile work environment and can be treated under the POSH Act 2013. So we must understand how we need to behave in a civilized manner wherein everybody is treated equally, where they feel free to work and they feel warm working in a working environment rather than thinking about what if somebody talks nasty or if they send some kind of a messages or they spread false lies, rumors about you in the organization. Let's not do that. Let's be civilized and let's understand and let's respect the boundaries of everyone.